Connecting to lecture. Okay, I'm recording. So we're catching up on the status of the Unscore protocol project and interactivity. And I was just sharing with Moritz that also the current prototype is not fully ready to play with it and exploit all the functionalities that we hope the Unscore protocol will enable. There are a couple of things happening in the project. Basically, we are working with different technologies and different communities at the same time. People from Ethereum, people from Polkadot and Kusama Holochain, and we are also working with RBDB. So we will have different communities handling content in different platforms. And what they will realize is that this content is interoperable with inside their own UI, so they don't have to jump into Ethereum interface to see content that was stored in Kusama or BTB or on a web server. So this will show how one object can be interacted from the same place that talks to different providers.
Right.
And the other thing that we have been working on, and this is with Jesus, he's a freelancer who is helping me these days, is to take the Web2 infrastructure, make it ready so that you can play with it easier and you don't have to depend on Ethereum or MetaMask.
Right.
And with that, it should be easier to play by creating like multiple branches of the documents and stuff.
Right.
So we are now 7 minutes into the start time, and the idea of this call was to make like a pair programming. I don't know how far we're going to go into the pair programming, but I was thinking that to do a pair programming, we would have to define what kind of use case we were planning to do,
right,
to implement. And to design a use case, we would also need to understand what are the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was thinking using this call to share a little bit about the code, talk while seeing the code and the interface, but at the same time, talking about the data structures that we are using, specifically Evees, and why they are similar to a Git repository, why they are different, if they are different in some aspects. And with that information, maybe you and others could think of it is going to be low-level technical stuff, not like UX stuff. But if you can grasp the data at low level, then you can think of which UXs, which new user experience could this enable.
Yes.
So what do you think? And well, you know, Guillem, you're pretty familiar with these topics. If you want to just keep half of your brain on this and half of something else, it's okay.
Sure. Yeah. Sounds good. I mean, I have some ideas of what we could attempt. Also, just briefly, I just had the idea that now that you're recording this, I might want to get the recording later on and take parts of it, at least, sort of taking out the context set up at the beginning, and then show the actual us like programming and talking about what we can do, and put that on YouTube, because I think it would be pretty cool to, and then I would have some kind of intro that I record where I explain what the meaning of this is, etc. So we don't have to deal with that here.
Perfect.
So my idea would be, or one of the projects that I've recently started and that I also felt would be a great context in which to build something with Evees and with the Underscore protocol is the HC Scraper project that I started on Futureland. I'll share the link to that in the chat. futureland.tv/Bierling/HC-scraper for those who are listening. And the basic idea was simply, I commented in somebody's Facebook post that something about like making it that I would like the ability to, I would like the ability to automatically save all of my Facebook posts that I make on an ongoing basis to another medium that is within my control, so that I can both search them like offline and not being on Facebook, as well as have the content available when I'm no longer on Facebook, or when Facebook like shuts me out, or for whatever reason I can't access Facebook. As an example case for all kinds of other social media, basically just a way to make sure that the content I put out onto platforms that are not within my control also stays available to me when I lose control to my identities and to my content on those platforms. And so the HC Scraper project was born from that. First, I thought, okay, I want to do this on Holochain, like save it to Holochain, but I didn't want to spend a lot of time and energy trying to work the complexities of that out in the beginning. So I just got started, and I basically just did the very minimum viable product of that. And I connected my Facebook to my Evernote through if this then that, ifttt.com. And so now whenever I share on Facebook, automatically it pulls that into my Evernote, into a dedicated notebook for Facebook posts. And then I have done the same thing for Twitter as well. Now, my interest in bringing underscore protocol into this, and especially Evees, would be now to make the format of the posts an Evee, like to basically have the post as it comes from Facebook.
But you're cutting out in a very weird way. Wait, he comes back. Imagine it's the video and not him. It's like we'll be back.
Facebook and then goes into Evernote, like
hey.
From Evernote where there's a note, and make.
Oh. So you come back for cool. 30 seconds.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay. You're talking about that you wanted the content on the Evernote to be an Evee.
Yes, exactly. That yes, I want to figure out how to have that be transformed into an Evee. Yes.
Okay, nice. So this is very well aligned with what I was planning for this call.
Great.
Okay, so I'll share my screen. This is good.
I love diagrams.
Do a blank diagram, but I will copy paste stuff from other diagrams that I've made. And so, yeah, let's start with your basic use case. You have an object on let's use green. We use green for mutable references. I'm using green for mutable references. And this is your Facebook post. So it lives on a platform that is Facebook. And basically this is the ID of the Facebook post. Right. And this Facebook post will be stored in some internal database of Facebook. Okay, and maybe it lets you edit it. Maybe it lets you share it around. Yeah. It will always use this ID to refer to that post. So the difference with this and an Evee, let's say you go to interpretive, is that the ID of the object is going to be like a full URL, in the sense that it combines where you want to find the object and what's its ID, kind of the full URL of the Facebook post. But then here we have a special standard for wrapping all the information about where the object is and what its ID into a JSON object, and we hash that, and that's the ID. But that's not mandatory, it's just the way we are doing it right now. We want to support other type of identifiers by anyway, you create an identifier into interactivity that is going to be mutable. And the difference with this is that it will not point to a database entry like directly that can be mutated. So I'm going to...
Did you say it will be, the idea will be mutable or immutable?
So the version in interactivity will be mutable. We want to have mutable entities, objects. The difference is that it will not point to the data of the object directly. It will point to the latest head of that object.
Right.
And this latest head is going to be immutable in the sense that its ID is content addressable.
Wait, so always the latest object is only immutable, but all the other ones that are not the latest are mutable?
So you start, basically when you are handling objects, you will start creating a chain, probably a chain of versions.
Right.
And the chain of each version is immutable, so this commit will always be the parent of this commit, and it cannot be modified. You cannot say that this commit is the parent of another.
And the pointer that you're speaking about is basically a hash that lives in each of the versions, right? Or each in the heads.
Yes.
Not head versions, but then one of which is the head.
Yes. So each of these are JSON objects.
Right.
And this will have some sort of parent ID.
Right.
Hash. And this will be the... It's too small. This is going to be... This hash is going to be the ID of this other object.
Wait. No, wait. The parent ID for the middle one would be the one that follows it? No.
So this is ID, is hash 2.
Like here, the latest version is the one up, not the one down.
Yeah, this is a weird. Yeah, this is commit. Let's say this is commit 1. This is commit 2. That's better. Thank you.
So okay, so that's the pointers that you're speaking of, like back pointers, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, not time going forward. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
We wouldn't be able to do that because the hash is not yet, like the object does not exist when we create.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, this is just when it's counterintuitive at first, but this line refers to this value here.
And tell me again what the green dot within intercreativity is now.
Well, in intercreativity, you will have a remote in which you will store one perspective of that object, which is kind of one branch of the repository. And again, it's a mutable reference to that object.
Right.
And so intercreativity will be made depending on which provider you are using it. Maybe you are using Holochain. So this mutable reference will live in Holochain. So this is going to have some metadata here saying that this is the remote. Now we are calling it remote. Is Holochain, maybe Holochain. And maybe some internal path inside that remote as a DNI hash.
Right. What does remote mean here? Like you said, remote. What I'm getting from that is there are multiple types of remote, like Holochain being one provider and other ones being other ones.
Yes, the remote is an authority. We actually mix terms, and originally called an authority is a platform, a machine, anyone who is the technology that you have to ask to know which is the latest head of that object.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. And so that means that authority can be pretty much anything, right? Like you're just saying that, okay, either this database can be the authority, or like this agent within this platform can be the authority? Does it mean like is it specifically about a technological base layer or base reality, or is it about a particular source of truth that could be like social in nature? Like what is the conceptual stacking here in some sense?
It's a storage layer that to which you can connect using a JavaScript connector. So from this is front-end application, you built a JavaScript connector. You can talk with that. So it can be an API on a standard Web2 server, or it can be Holochain, or it can be Ethereum, or it can also be your own local storage.
Right. So anything that can be like read from with a JavaScript interpreter.
Exactly. That's one thing. So a remote is an ID, a string that identifies it, but in the front end, you develop a whole class, a JavaScript class, which is called Evee's remote. Which will implement this is like Holochain.
I think it's class, yeah.
So this piece of code is implemented in the front end, and if you follow an interface, you will be able to handle that mutable reference with that.
Right.
So our remote is a combination of the JavaScript class and the storage layer technology.
Right. I know this doesn't really matter right now, but for my own curiosity, in the future, you would also be interested in other people implementing other languages that interface with this or make it possible to have more relationships, right?
And as in different, you are not talking about different providers or providers?
No. Like I'm just wondering, because you said specifically JavaScript, and so I was wondering, okay, is it, I mean, not that you need to plan for this, but I assume that in the future it could potentially at some later date be possible to use other languages as well.
Yes, the basic concept can be extended, I think.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I think it's not so much about the language, it's about the platform.
Right.
So we chose to assume heavily, at least on the tools we are building, that we are building for web applications.
100%.
And whatever you want to write your language on, then it has to compile down to JavaScript. But we have also thought about doing some CLI, and you could do that with anything. Like as long as the data structures are compatible, we are good.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, this is a diagram I had in my head these days, but I haven't implemented. But there are like different layers of compatibility with the Ansible protocol. At the deepest
and now we're going into Cortex, right? Already a bit.
No, I think not.
Nope.
Well,
no.
No, right. Sorry. The Codex Framework was about managing like the interfacing between the back end and the front end, and like which modules to employ at which point, right? Something like that.
No, it's more about recognizing patterns on the objects themselves.
Right. This was sort of the file extension equivalent, right?
Something like that, yeah.
That's one way I kind of make my mind around Cortex is typing system for JavaScript object, for JSON objects.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a
front-end application can adapt. Now, what you said about limited to JavaScript, so the data structure, which is a clone of Git data. This is Git basically. Git Works like this. These are commit objects. I am missing something because commit objects don't come alone. They come with data object. So this is how Git works. You have commits that point to its parent, and then they point to a data block that is the actual file. In this case, this block is a JSON object. And there's this strategy of saying when a web application creates an object, it just not create a mutable reference like Facebook does on a database, but it handles all its its history as a sequence of content addressable commits. That's being underscore protocol compatible in the sense that you work with Evees, and that is language agnostic. It's like just create the identifiers using hashes of the objects and keep version history of those. If you do that, then you can serve, you can provide all the history of your object, and others can fork it, because once you have a sequence of commits, a fork is simply creating a new commit that points to a parent in the sequence. So that's the basic level, like at the most simplest level. And then this size of this. Then what I was thinking is that at like a more extended level, what you have with the underscore protocol is that you I want to, sorry, I told you this was the first time that I made this diagram, so I think here you will have multi-platforms. So, and this is the idea that in your app you are able to read objects that come from different providers. So you can so you can read these data structures from one platform or to another.
Right.
And maybe we will have to review this diagram, but so let's keep like an informal conversation at the moment, and we will publish it when it's ready. And again, if you have problems, but at the deeper layer of, I was thinking, yeah, this is where I really wanted to arrive. This is modular front-end application. And here, basically, the idea, the underscore protocol offers tools to build modular applications in the frontend that can handle Evees on multiple platforms, and they offer reusable components for other applications to reuse in other places. So it's like Facebook doesn't just create a single page application that is a bundle of stuff that cannot be reused, but they create the component, the post editor, and the buttons of like and reply. They create it as a reusable UI component that eventually Evernote could say, oh, I want to just reuse that way of interacting with that Facebook post, and then you on Evernote or on Holochain you should reuse this front-end application.
Right.
And this is a the micro orchestrator and the Codex Framework.
Yeah, this is where Cortex comes in. Yeah.
Right. Right. Got it. Great.
Okay. So you see, this is, in a way, we are covering a huge space.
Yes.
And we'll probably end up focusing on some aspects of each.
Yes.
But we like to work with modular applications, and they are working fine because of recent technology, with element and stuff, and like edit element and Inversify dependency injection. And we need multi-platform, so everything is just working, and we feel comfortable for the moment working on that. And so, yeah, this is an Evee. It's just a sequence of commits. It can live on one place, on one platform. And then imagine that somebody wants to create a fork of your post. Maybe you shared you made your Facebook post, you move it into your Holochain space, and somebody on RDTV saw your post, you share it with other people, and they wanted to edit it. They cannot. Maybe you don't have public edition access to your Holochain space. You probably don't. So what they can do is that they can create a new perspective of that post into RBTB and govern that perspective. Is the same process of when you fork a Git repository, and they can create a new. They can modify it on RBTB. But they will keep the history of the object by saying that this is a new version of is a new commit in the sequence of evolutions of this object,
right,
that includes your versions. This is exactly what happens with a GitHub repository when you create a new branch or when you fork. Creating a new branch means that you keep the access control. Forking in GitHub means that you change the access control. So in this case, you are forking because this is another user. And now these posts have two perspectives, one on Holochain and one on RBTB. And if the front end is sensitive to this, it can ask RBTB, hey, do you know of perspectives about this object? And so the UI will show both, and they will let you merge.
What happens specific or precisely when you fork this this perspective, or this Evee, let's say, or this particular version of the post to the OrbitDB? Does it sort of take all of its history over into OrbitDB and then add a new one on top, or does it just reference the other post where it is, but leave the history there? Because I see some kind of potential issue with just referencing something from somewhere where there's a history there, but you don't take the history with you, and so then the history could be changed after the fact.
Yeah, so both things are important. But starting for the last sentence you said, the key aspect of the power of Git is that you cannot change the history of that.
Right. That's so what I'm asking.
If this is in Holochain, yeah, and this guy is referencing, this is saying that it's referenced this previous version. Even Holochain will never be able to say that this version said something different from what it actually said.
Yes.
So cannot be modified.
What I'm saying is, what I'm asking specifically is, like, do you then have the history of the other version from which you copied it also available in OrbitDB? Because if you don't, then if you don't have access to the other database provider, basically like Holochain, then you can't like look at the history of it.
So yeah, if the data is not there, you will not be able to access the history. But before it, the key aspect here is that these objects have identifiers that are platform agnostic.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just you can always clone objects from one place to another. So when you branch, I think, like the last time we played with the implementation, it was only a reference, but you can always clone all the objects you want, and so you can never lose history in the second one.
Exactly.
Right, because that's exactly what I'm asking. Like, I want to know whether I can basically pull the sovereignty over having the history data available to me into my own sphere of control, basically, not only have it be in somebody else's.
Yes, this is, yeah, you can do that because these objects are completely platform agnostic. It says that you don't really care where you find them. If you find them written on a piece of paper, you can consider that, oh, this is a valid object. And this is a distinction on Evee's remote. It has a property now, which is the store. And the store is where the objects are saved. And all stores are basically the same. Because
so
it's IPFS or not.
I want to like reflect here for a second, like take a breather, because what that basically means is so powerful, but I don't think that somebody who would be listening to this really understands how powerful that is. Because just as you just said, like you could write something down on a paper and it would be a valid reference to somebody to fork it, quote unquote, or to reference it, simply if it follows the right, if it adheres to the right data structure, and the hashing basically is conformant with the universal way of doing it, right? So I could literally have like write my journal in a sense, in a way, then like offline hash it and produce a hash of the text that I've created and write it like by hand on my journal, and like have that be an Evee in a sense that I can reference in my online stuff without actually giving it away as digital data. So that sounds like very far-fetched and like not very user-friendly, absolutely. But for me, that's incredible, because it means you can now have a strong link between analog and digital means of saving and referencing information.
The hash function is it's impossible to compute mentally. Like,
right. But
you could simulate like an app that will hash it.
Or I can just write what I wrote like digitally but offline into something, hash it, and then write down the hash on the paper. That's what I'm saying. Or, and of course, you could also take a picture of it and hash that, and then put the hash on the paper as well.
Which was what I would think that would be cool, like hashing handwritten content.
Right, and then this can be actually private. And this is what I find incredible, because it means like I can have a private process of thinking that produces a reference point that I can then branch off of public information that people can like look at, but maintain exclusive control, and not even digital exclusive control, but like analog. It's not even a digital space. It's not even like spyable by, I don't know, NSA or whatever, and still have there to be a link. So
yeah. Yes, and this, maybe this is a good point to talk about links, because this everything that we said here is Git, and basically it works on the primitive of updating the object, so you can update it. Something we have worked a lot is the possibility of linking objects, so that yeah.
I'm getting shivers right now, because it's like we have a universal unit of knowledge, or a universal unit of information, just like we have had like a universal unit of exchange with money. Like, I don't know. Sorry, go on. Yes.
It's I mean, content addressable is powerful, and it's tricky. It's really amazing what you can do with it. And so, yeah, just to explain what I was doing here, these are the clones of these two objects, and now it doesn't matter if this doesn't exist. It's actually the same link. But where I was going is that you can link stuff. So we are working on the possibility of linking objects, meaning that if this Facebook post had some, yeah, let's think about comments. It's not the best example, because let's consider the case we are familiar with. Let's assume that this Facebook post by this other user was such a good idea that this person wanted to extend it. And this person extended the idea not by enlarging the content of it, but by creating new elements, like new sub-elements, subsections of the Facebook post.
Right.
This, in our case, means that this user created, optionally decided to create new Evees we'll call them self-post. Okay. He created new Evees so that the whole content of the extended version of the post was made of different elements.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens here is that the link, it will have to, that person will need to create a new commit, new version of the post. And that new version of the post will have a new data that will include the fact that this post now have a child, which is a sub post, which has some content.
Right.
Okay. So this is the other key difference from what we are doing with like a Git repository. A Git repository has usually, it's very hard to handle links between repositories. There is something called submodules, but in this case, this is like a very simple from the front end. So when you are in an app, you are, while you interact with the app, you are starting to create links. This document, let's say this was the original post, and that user press enter, he is creating a new sub post that is a new object. And so you are the app is continuously managing the hierarchy of objects that are linked, and some of them can be fully fledged repositories, so you could eventually fork them in some different place.
Right. Can you briefly remind me what the colors in the dots stand for to see what's happening?
Okay, so the green ones are the perspectives, which are mutable references, and they have a remote associated to them.
Right.
Here is Arbitrary, and the path is the database hash. The blue ones are the commits, which keep the history, the life of the object.
Right.
And the red ones are the actual data objects,
right,
which are kind of
oh, so like the blue basically includes the metadata, or and the red is this the strict JSON object.
Yes, exactly.
What is the exact metadata that the blue has on top of the JSON object?
It has the parent ID, that's it basically.
So
the history.
So, but then the JSON object that you're speaking about with the red would be just the text or whatever the content is of the thing. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought I had an image here. So yeah, the red one is a JSON object which free properties. In this case, let's assume it's a JSON object which has I don't know what Facebook uses for the posts.
Right.
It could be text. And then each of these could be text modifications of the text.
Right.
And then what happens is that the links here means that you add something like links to the object.
Right.
And you point to subpost one. So the links are part of the content of the object.
Right.
Okay.
And so when you fork and when you link to others, then you reference the blue, you reference the full JSON object, of course. And if you fork it and then you, for example, let's say there's the text hello world in the original one, and then you fork it and you make your own version of it, and then you completely erase the text and instead make it a video. Like it's still the same like history, the same like object basically that you're manipulating, but just the content has changed significantly.
Yeah, that can be done. I mean, that it's not prevented, but
yeah, and that kind of uses weird things that can happen is why we need Cortex.
Right.
Because we don't know what's in the data.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, because maybe this Facebook post evolved into wrong research node, which has other stuff.
Right.
And so now it cannot be rendered with the Facebook comment editor. It needs the wrong research editor or interactivity editor.
Right.
And the other thing that I want to say is that these links, they don't need to go to perspective. It could be linked directly to the commit.
Right.
In which case, it means that you know that it won't be updated ever or to the data. So the infrastructure is flexible, thanks to Guillem, to handle this case.
Oh wait, so you can actually link just to the content, not to the commit, basically.
Yes. Yeah.
But then it's not a link, right? Then it's just referencing the content as like the starting point and basically having it available. But you can't actually follow that further down then because it doesn't have the hash, it doesn't have the identifier.
It is fully fledged. I mean, you could run link to the commit.
Yes.
In which case, let's say this is let's try supposed content. So if you point to a commit whose data is that supposed content, the only difference between linking to this commit and linking to the green one is that it will never change.
Yeah.
You know that. And this is important in the sense that if you link to something that is mutable, you are making the owner of that object capable of updating your content. So if the subpost updates, then the content of the document is updated.
I was wondering specifically about linking just to the content of like the thing, not even the commit, and that's what I think you can't do, right? Because there's no identifier then if you remove the metadata.
It's you can still go to the content. If you go to the commit, you're in a middle ground. You cannot update, but maybe you want.
The commit, yes, but you just made the arrow go to the red dot, which itself would just be the actual content without the metadata, that would make it a commit. So that's what I'm saying, that if you do that, like I literally just reference subpost content, then I can't actually reference it. I mean, I can reference it in the sense that I take that text, the content, over into my space and I say this is the starting point for me, but I'm not allowing a traversal back to the origin of it.
Wait, you lose the version control.
Wait, so I think there's an important thing here, which is the data is hashed also. So the data, the red dot has an identifier, which is its hash.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's stored on the commit. You could actually reference that hash within another piece of data. Right. You could do that and it would render, but you would lose the version control, as Pepo said.
And you would also lose the actual information because it's just the hash and the I guess the text itself, but it's not like, because if it's in a different storage medium and I just reference the hash, then I take the hash to identify with me, but I don't have the actual content available. And so I can't actually replicate the content from the hash. So it's just basically discoverable. Like if I reproduce the content and I hash it, then yes, I have the same thing again, but I lose the actual content unless I specifically clone it over to my own database.
Mm-hmm. It depends. You could also, like, we are trying to be flexible with links. So we don't have like one link type rules.
That would have been my
all.
next question. Like, do you have arbitrary links in this?
Yeah, no, you can define your own type of links, and with Cortex recognizes which type of link you are trying to resolve, and then, okay, this is a link that has the authority and then the hash of the object. So how can I resolve that? Okay, let me go get my authorities from the front-end libraries I have, and then fetch the object from there.
Right.
Yeah.
Love that we're getting into the nitty-gritty of this. It's good.
Yes,
I remember
very deep.
Yeah, I remember seeing somebody comment on a Rome tweet, I think, that they were asking about whether the relationship, or not, maybe it wasn't Holochain. No, I think it was a Holochain forum, about how whether the relationship itself could be an object, like the link between different like commits or different entries, basically. Like, I don't know that we need to discuss this, but I thought the thought was interesting.
Yes, I think we have discussed. My understanding of that is that you have 3 types of links. One is from the parent to the child. It's like this kind of link is the post owner can tell who is the sub-post. That's one kind of link. The other kind of link, which we are not using so much of at the moment, would be something like in a reverse. It's kind of the same, but it means that it's the child who says who is his parent, and this would be useful for a comment on the post. It's not the owner of the post who decides if there's a new comment. Somebody just, or a reply to a tweet. And so the child determines who is his parent. And then you can also have what you said, which is a third object owned by a third party, which points to both. And this could be, for instance, generic tags of people associating stuff to other stuff.
Right. Yeah, bidirectional pointers seem very important in the future.
Yes, and this is not part of the product. It's like the data structure doesn't force you to keep track of the bidirectional links, but the platform can
and it doesn't need to
filter that. It can filter that.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. But it's,
on the web server, we will keep bidirectional links, so you can ask sub-post one who is.
That's just expected as usability by normal people, I guess. Yeah. I've been playing around with Keybase the last couple of days, or the last week. Do you know Keybase, this like chat thing?
Yes, I'm using it.
I mean, I have concerns about it being like being part of Zoom now, and that Zoom has Chinese funding, and like that they maybe corrupt the actual encryption. I don't know, but I'm bringing that up because Keybase, I just discovered, has this Git functionality that you can actually have your own private Git repositories within Keybase rather than on GitHub. And so I was thinking like that would be really cool to like, oh, like I can actually not use GitHub anymore and just collaborate with people and do it through a cryptographic identity rather than through a corporate hosted service. And that might be an interesting thing to play with also, because they have local like hashing capability. I think they do within Keybase, you can actually put in any arbitrary text or content, and then it hashes it for you, or it encrypts it for you. I don't know which. I think it's just encryption, not hashing. But that would be like, I don't know, there's something there where they have their own links that allow you to reference the things that are on your device, on your computer, basically with an identifier. So I don't know where that comes in, but it's another interesting facet of all of this.
Yeah, I've seen the GitHub, the Git functionality, but I haven't used it, and it would be really great. Yeah, definitely. It was interesting to see how it goes. And then most of these applications that work either with a decentralized platform like IPFS or with encryption, probably maybe Keybase internally keeps hashes of the versions of the objects as a way of signing them, maybe. I would say it's very likely. So
Right.
the step needed to be able to, I have too much private stuff here. Let's go here. This is not private. The step for me to be able to take this object from Keybase and drag and drop it into interactivity
Right.
is not that far. It's where we want to go. So
Yes.
if the object is already content addressable, it's
Yes.
really just a matter of adding metadata to the drag and drop event. So that
Right.
here I can say, oh, I have to ask the open API of Keybase for this object,
Right.
and that's it.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah, I think you can. I think you can even like do on the three dot menu with a message, and I think there's even a link there. At least they do it with files. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it's an internal
Right.
link.
It'll only work for the people who actually have access to it. So that's pretty cool.
And yeah, mutable references, and each remote can also handles access control. And this is important because this is a big distinction between Netscape protocol and other stuff like Ceramic.
Mm-hmm.
This is another technology that came up recently from Freebox, is that the access control is determined by the platform, not by the protocol. So usually the platform can say who can edit, who can read, and that kind of things.
Guys, I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay, we're almost on the hour. I don't know how long we will keep it. But yeah, this just make us a fast overview of this demo, in the sense that here we have section 1, and when I make it a title, I'm making this new paragraph a child of section 1, and when I say this is section 2, and I say this is heading, I'm making it a sibling of section 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm explaining this to show that while I am editing this, I am basically building a very relatively complex hierarchy of Evees that are linked together.
Right.
And I think in this version, in this version, I'm showing some metadata so you can see the perspective ID, authority. This is an HTTP server, the head. It's a bit slow, but this is how an actual head looks like. There are other stuff I didn't want to. So the parent IDs is an array and the data ID, and then the data object, which is pretty similar to that.
Right.
This is in action, how it is happening. And the reason for which it is not showing here is because these are pointed to commits. So the editor doesn't create a new Evee for each element; it creates commits. And the wiki, instead, the wiki eats an Evee. The wiki, it's another Evee. It has some data, doesn't have any page. So this perspective, this perspective does have a page. So you see, I switched to another perspective of the wiki. There is the official perspective. I go slow here. This is the idea of the perspective. It lives on Ethereum, on this smart contract. This is the head. We include a hint that it is an IPFS. Doesn't mean that it's only on IPFS. It's the data, empty pages. And then the other perspectives, there's another perspective of the wiki, which has another ID and lives on an HTTP server. And has a new head and a new data, which includes a page.
Right.
And when I make it public, when I make a proposal, I basically propose a merge into Ethereum. we didn't go into the details of this, but I'm basically creating the new page perspective that it's on HTTP. I'm creating a new perspective on Ethereum, and it's created as a proposal, so it doesn't execute. But basically, this subpost can then finally go to another platform. So this is when a merge occurs, and you have something different from Git, which is the possibility of recursively merge all its sub-repositories. And this is a complex thing. I just wanted to show how, at least on the front end, the multiple elements would look like.
Right. And like I assume that like very common, for example, texts like, I don't know, hello world, or introduction or whatever, like things that people write a lot in different contexts, like they definitely have, of course, different IDs, because, I mean, not different IDs in terms of the hashing of the pure content, but different IDs in terms of the commits that somebody would make with that as a single commit, because the metadata is also included in it, right?
Yes. If we can have same data objects by accident, we could have same commits, but it will be less likely because the commit is includes the creator ID and the date timestamp. But the same data object is very likely. I mean, it's just an empty object will be very.
It would be very interesting to be able to then, within the context of your own store of all this information, to be able to run some analysis on like what the most used contents are, and like, I don't know, do some analysis on that in the future.
It actually poses a challenge in terms of access control, because say you create a hash of hello world data object, and you say that only you can read that, but then somebody else has created the same object.
Right.
So access control is tricky for content addressable objects.
Right. Well, I guess the context always matters, like the provenance of who creates it, and then what context it gets used in. I mean, they can't really preclude you from also coming up with the same content and creating the same kind of thing within your own control. But then it's just a question what the social process is for assigning validity to each of these in whatever setting.
Yeah. Oh, this is also important, and this is we are not yet doing that, but you could sign with your private key these objects. So you can prove that you create the object.
Did you say we haven't talked about it, or did you say it's not implemented yet? Because I know it's implemented with Ethereum, right?
It is. Let's see. There is a proof placeholder, but we are not yet filling the proof. But the infrastructure is prepared to handle signatures of these objects.
Right. And what is the hashing algorithm that you use?
And this is another difference also with Git. We use CID as a generic content addressable standard that can handle multiple hashing algorithms. So it can be the case that this is also a Holochain handles one hashing algorithm, and then RBDB handles another one. So maybe this commit is with SH3 and this commit is with SH2. This also creates a complication of having same object with different commits, with different hashes, but we handle that.
Great.
Explicitly.
Wow. There's so much complexity that's hidden from view that it's incredible, but it's amazing.
Yeah, that's a lot of conversations. No, we can't do this, and we are not like yet with merges. Merges was like a big one.
I can show you this. I want to. This is the debug of the process of forking and merging, and how all the objects are created, and then when you merge and you create new objects. So yeah, it grows in complexity very fast. but it holds together, and hopefully the tools that we are developing will hide this complexity.
Mm-hmm.
So that users can just think of this, oh, I have a page here, I want to create a new perspective with it, work with it.
Do you feel like you have a grip on, or like a handle on the complexity and the scope and the sort of the problem space completely, and it's now just a matter of like getting the right people to help and do the work that is actually building it out? Or is it more there's like open-ended parts still where it's like remaining uncertainty or unknown unknowns that you don't know, or known unknowns that you don't know yet?
I feel much better now after 16 months. I mean, I think I'm pretty confident that there's something that can be built for content management on multiple platforms with Git-like features, with what we have now. No new solution that needs to be found.
Right. No, I'm 100% certain that there's value here and that people will be able to use it in whatever state it is in right now, just like when it's usable for them as a normal user. But just thinking about like, do you feel like you find the space and now it's more like working it all through, or is it like edges where you think, oh, like this is something we would like to do, we're not really sure like whether it's even possible, but we're working on it. Like, is that something like that there?
So probably one of the biggest challenges is UX. So, because when you have this hierarchy of objects that can be nested flexibly, and then you can fork them flexibly, then letting people understand what is happening is probably one of the open problems.
There's complexity in translating the cryptographic relationships to the visual relationships that people can intuitively grasp and remain true, right?
Yeah. Just to give you an example, this page, original post, has 3 perspectives. I was just playing with this feature. And the official wiki, which is another Evee, has only 1 other perspective. But it actually has 5 other perspectives because one of its child has 4 perspectives. So we are not aggregating those here. And actually, this is a local stuff. We hide this complexity on our front-end application.
Right.
But being able to handle that kind of cases is kind of one of the key open issues.
Right. I really like the way that Philip solves some of the complexity of navigation by having this contextual help menu that allows you to see like what all the different action possibilities are on the page and what the icons for it are. Like, I don't know whether that is something, but you already do it basically with this like light blue side thing that you can click on and get the context. Like, I think something like that is really crucial, like a sort of meta context for each individual atomic object.
Okay.
Like, for example, here, just like, I don't think it's probably the best way to do it, but just blurting it out. Like right now you have like one light blue thing next to the headline, but then you could have like a light blue thing that goes for the 2 of them together. Like, okay, this is now one EV2. So you could have a translate to, okay, this is an Evee and this is an Evee and then this is an Evee, and maybe within the front end application you only show like 1 or 2 levels of this, but the ability to go deeper if you want to, if you like go into context, like basically maybe parent and child context if there's something there, and leave the rest of the complexity away, and then you always know when you go 1 level deeper, you'll be able to access even more 1 level deeper as you need to.
Yeah, aggregate a number of levels.
Right.
That's probably what makes intuitive sense. Yeah. Something like also also original post page has 4 perspectives or whatever.
Right.
Here.
And so this is where the lit element is important, right?
This is a problem of fetching data actually by the remote. The UI can orchestrate it by asking the child's stuff, but it would be slow. So it's probably the backend needs to be able to, is the one who can do it fast and should inform the front end about it.
Right. I like the way that Beaker browser solves at least a part of this, in that when you visit a Beaker page with a Hyper protocol as a backend, then you can click on this Wi-Fi icon in the address bar, and you can flick a switch that says like you want to keep that website available for others. And so that means you become basically a torrent seeder for that site within the Beaker network. And so you're making a conscious decision to pull that content into your own store locally and to act as somebody who makes it available to others as well. So that way you can have, like, you make a conscious decision, which I think is always the important part.
Yeah. Yeah, this can be also chosen by each user, like what they want to see.
Right, right. Adds complexity again, but yeah. I think I feel so happy about how all of these different protocols and efforts, initiatives, and applications, like they have all the pieces. I think there are all the pieces in the peer-to-peer space now there. Like I don't think there's fundamentally anything that's missing in terms of making Web3 work complete, like across the board. Basically, the only question is like how to work them together. Basically, how to have them be the web that the web was for the earlier versions.
Yeah, and it's also hard to compete with Web2 applications. They are super fast, super friendly, and Web3 technologies tend to be slower and more complex.
I think there's you're already doing it. Like you, not even that Web3 is you're making it fast or something like that, but just by having the capacity to have things live in different platforms, including Web2, you can have Web2 be the interface that then references as ultimate points of truth or ultimate sources of truth Web3 content. Like so that the Web2 is for you to access it fast, work with it, etc., but not ultimately 100% trusted. And then when you really need to trust something, you can go to Web3 and take the hit of the higher cost of loading or whatever.
That's kind of the idea. So you use Web3 only for what you need. And you could use, in our case, you can use Ethereum for collective governance of content, so DAOs. That can only be done with Ethereum for other stuff similar to Ethereum.
Right.
Or you can use like privacy-focused, decentralized storage networks for your private content.
Right.
Without having to choose between one of those. You can move depending on the use case.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I think we are at the end of the hour quite about it. I think for us to now dive into code would be a bit too much. I would love to do this again if it makes sense. And maybe we can sort of not even make it about like me and doing pair programming, which happened to be today, but have it be a recurring, maybe not even weekly, so maybe bi-weekly or something like that thing where we can make it like a hack fest kind of thing or hack along type thing for underscore protocol and see where that goes.
Yeah. I look forward to this. I think this was very useful because we went into one of the key aspects. There are other stuff that we could go over, like Cortex or the microorchestrator, and that we can have the dedicated sessions on those.
Yes, I think having a regular event like this for this quote unquote now coming into existence community is key, and it's great because now I can invite my friends along or to share the thing of it afterwards, and it builds sort of collective awareness. Oh, I'm part of a group. I'm not just reading a website. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a calendar. I mean, I'm creating these events on a calendar. Maybe we can share links to the calendar, and I suggest we try to keep it weekly.
Yeah.
At least at the beginning when we cover most of the material. When we run out of material, then we can.
Maybe you can make a Notion page about like the community calls or something like that, and then we can also have the Telegram as a way to like week to week also coordinate whether this time works for people. And then if it's like nobody can show up, then you could like change it one time or something, sort of similar to how the Holochain community does it around the virtual hackathons as well.
Yeah.
And then we'll find our rhythm.
We can share this video, see what other people think about it, and plan the next one for next Friday, maybe,
Yes.
and see what other people think. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Good.
And as much as possible, I would love for us to demonstrate the power of this with the stuff that we put out. Like, for example, this video, hash it, make it an Evee, share it on YouTube and give the metadata in the description or something like that, and just model what we want to move towards.
Yeah. So I think the ultimate step on that, which is maybe not too far, is to take this
yes.
notion of space and just put it here on here on ETH intercreativity.
Fantastic.
And so you could eventually, this page you talk about community, you could eventually just make a fork of the space and propose make an update proposal.
Right, and the ETH intercreativity is operational, right? Like anybody can use it if they have a Robson network identity.
It has to be on Rinkeby.
Rinkeby, right? Yes.
Rinkeby, and its function, it's working. We are having issues with the Web2 database, so sometimes it freezes.
Right.
We have to work on that. It's mostly operating.
Right. So I could create my space, or you could somehow make your space available, and then I could fork, etc., and we could play with it.
Yeah, there are a handful of spaces people have been created.
Oh wow!
And I have one, and you can fork it and work on it. And there is one for intercreativity also.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so much good here. This is a link to the Notion at the moment.
Yep. Great. Well, I guess we'll iteratively build this infrastructure out. I love that we're erring on the side of usability and fast adaptivity rather than like immediate dogmatic, okay, everything has to be now in this Web3 stuff. So it's great.
Nice. Okay, so maybe we can leave it for that now. I will stop recording.
Yep.
This? Stop sharing. Stop recording.